Welcome to the home stretch to 121 edition of Sharing Sox. I'm duty geezer Leigh Allan. With me, my son and West Coast correspondent Will. And we have been talking, not on tape, obviously, about the fact that Will is on the West Coast. The White Sox will be on the West Coast for half their games left. Almost half.
Yeah.
And his attempt to be in the stadium for loss number 121 when the record is set.
So last night,
he thought he was set until we're recording this on Thursday between the Baltimore and Boston series, and he thought he was set until whatever the hell happened in Baltimore on Wednesday night.
yeah, they really kind of dashed my hopes and dreams. You hate to see your team win a game, and this was a brutal one because I thought for sure Baltimore would get away with that whole series. So yeah, what we're looking at now is they can be at loss 118 if they lose out when they arrive in Anaheim, which means on Friday night they would have to lose to get to 119. On Saturday they would have to lose to get to 120. And then they'd have one shot in Anaheim. Then they go to San Diego, which is also not very far from me. So that's 3 more opportunities. However, San Diego is a lot farther and a lot more expensive than the $1 that the tickets to the Anaheim games currently are. They are $1.
Wow.
$1. You
Plus tax and tip?
You can sit 5 rows back from the field for, I think, $14 behind the dugout, behind the White Sox dugout. So I'm keeping hope alive. I think it's a lot to ask that they make it all the way without winning another one.
Yeah, I think you're in trouble. I mean, we both know they're not going to win many, but something. I mean, look what happened last night. It's going to happen again in Boston or Cleveland.
It's baseball.
Bizarrely, they're 5-5 with the Guardians on the season, which is they've kind of handed Kansas City and Minnesota the chance to take the division because they're 1-12 against each of them.
I think it's kind of cool, actually, to have the opportunity to be the worst team ever, but stop the best team in the division from winning it. I think there's something very cool there. I guess that's a very silver lining, maybe a gold or platinum lining to something like this. But yeah, so then they go to San Diego where there's 3 more chances, but the Padres are now catching up to the Dodgers. They're only 4.5 games back, 3.5 games back if you count the tiebreaker situation. So the Padres fans are obviously going to be showing up in droves. That stadium already is one of the best-selling ballparks in the entire country in terms of audience, seats sold percentage. Padres games, they love the Padres. San Diego loves the Padres. I do not like the Padres, but I will say this. I'm impressed by how much San Diego loves them because they kind of have always seemed to me like one of those teams that could get in trouble with not having enough people, maybe having to move. But, it's like the Tony Gwynn effect just set them up forever. That's how good he was. I think he made so many people lifelong Padres fans that they are set in San Diego. And I don't blame them. Tony Gwynn is one of my favorite players to ever play.
Mine too. Absolutely.
I've heard that if you take the historical tour there, it's about 90% Tony Gwynn focused because there's not a ton else in terms of Hall of Fame caliber stuff for guys who played there for a long time. A lot of great players have been on the Padres, but not as many great players have played on the Padres for a very long time like Gwynn did. So it's possible, if the White Sox don't win again, then I would feel pretty confident that if I go to San Diego, I'm going to see it. But not winning again also, I really kind of hope, for my planning's sake, I hope that they just win 2 out of 3 in Boston or something and then just cure me of my pains of having to figure out how to do this. but then ultimately lose game 121. I mean, we have to lose 121 games.
Yeah, there's no sense of pushing to almost the record. But that would be a White Sox thing to do. I mean, that's what I predicted a couple of our shows ago. It'd be 119. You're going to lose 119.
And I hate to say it, but I think that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be something stupid like that just to spite us. You know, White Sox fans are currently rallying behind this team to lose, not to win. But they are watching games. They are invested. I mean, my White Sox text threads compared to 4 months ago are now an everyday thing because everybody's like, we can do it. We can do it. We can help our Cinderella. We can definitely get to this loss. I do think in my heart of hearts, I still think that they are going to beat the record. I think.
Well, the odds, even Pacoda and Fangraphs, which are the computers, were very reticent to put them over 120 for a long time. They were sitting around 104, 105. You're going, what, are you kidding us? But now they're both over 120.
Even a few weeks ago, they had them at 114, and I was like, well, the White Sox proved you wrong on that by this little 12-game losing streak that they went on. Yeah, it is very bleak. I think there's a good chance we could end up in the 122, 123 range. But you never know with this team. You never know. We could go on another massive losing streak starting tonight. We own
not tonight because they're off.
Tomorrow. We own 3 losing streaks over 10 games?
Yeah, and our 3, there have been other 3s twice by the Mets, 62 and 65. But our 3 wipe them out. I mean,
yeah.
Our shortest of the 3 is 12, and their longest was 12. So, I mean, we got 12.
Yeah, and we I believe I saw the stat that we are the first team in Major League history to own all 3 of the longest losing streaks in a single season in Major League Baseball for that season. So we are the first time a team has owned the top 3 longest losing streaks in a single season.
Well, the list of accomplishments is long. There's no question. It's a long, long list of accomplishments. But the big one is loss number 121.
Yes. Yeah. That's the one you want. That's the one you want because, I mean, I'm sure, it could be broken again someday by somebody. But it really, it takes so much to lose that many games these days. It's harder and harder to do it. And
you have to have not the players themselves, of course, or the coaches, but the front office has to have given up before the season starts, which is the Dylan Cease trade. And then they have to get, well, first of all, you have to be really bad to start with. You're starting off a 101 loss base. Then you lost some people to free agency. Then the Dylan Cease trade. That's by itself taking you up to 107 or 108. And then the trade deadline, Eloy, although he did not come through and beat him, I thought it was going to happen in Baltimore Wednesday night. The Sox were up 8-1, I think. And Eloy came up with 2 guys on base. And you remember what he did to the Cubs? I mean, after the Cubs traded the Sox, he destroyed the Cubs every game. He did 220 against the rest of the league and 595 with 18 homers against the Cubs.
And like 500-foot shots too.
Yeah. So I thought, Eloy's got to park it. He may not win the game, but he's got to park it. This is what's going to, and he flew out. The day before, he'd gotten that 3-run error when they and then got hit in the back of the head on another one.
Yeah.
But at any rate, Eloy's done really well. And of course, DeYoung has gone absolutely nuts.
Yeah, he has. And also for the guy who landed out here in Los Angeles, Michael Kopech, looking like
he's given up a run now, right? He's given up one run.
He's given up 1 run, but in over 10 innings.
It was 12. It's over 12. Yeah. innings.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He's past 10 innings, so making the math easy for you. 1 run in over 10 innings means that your ERA is well under 1. He has been absolutely electric to come to LA to not only show us, okay, you're a good guy to bring in the 6th inning, 7th inning, you're going to be dependable, your stuff is working, but to then move into the closer role within a month, really, is absolutely spectacular. And I'll tell you this, if I'm Dave Roberts, I'm keeping him there for the rest of this season. I'm keeping him there in the postseason. I'm putting him in high leverage situations. The guy looks like what we all knew he could be like. Like, we all knew. I mean, we would watch those videos. He was always hurt. Michael Kopech's woes are not just Michael Kopech wasn't pitching to his potential. Dude was constantly hurt for years. But when you saw those glimpses, it looked like he had a cheat code on in a video game. I mean, he would throw pitches where you're like, has a ball ever moved like that before? Has anyone figured this out before? And he is now looking like that in games that are extremely important for the Dodgers to win. I don't think anybody expected the Dodgers to be in a division race in September, but because of every starting pitcher they've had, arms falling off this year, that's where they find themselves. And Kopech has been a huge reason that they are still where they are in the division. It is incredible to watch a pitch. It's so fun as a guy who's been following him since what feels like he was a baby, to come up and go over to a real team and show us what he can really do. Because he's making an argument that, he should have a nice extension and a payday coming at some point. And I'm happy to see that from him.
What's the word in the clubhouse? Has he immediately become one of the guys kind of thing? Or,
I mean, it's tough to tell with bullpen guys, because they're, I'm not in the clubhouse when they're in the clubhouse. So, I'll see them around the stadium. But, your camaraderie stuff that you get to see is all in the dugout. And, of course, he's not really ever in the dugout. If he is, it's because he's done pitching. But and when you pitch the 9th, it's, not a lot of dugout time after that. But I certainly have not heard any rumblings that he just seems like he's probably a very quiet guy, very just pleasant, quiet guy. The team camaraderie as a whole is through the roof right now. And when you bring in a guy like that while you're having pitching woes, and this guy comes from, the worst team in baseball, maybe the worst team ever in baseball, and then comes in and is just electric when he gets on the mound for you, that's going to make everybody pretty okay with your presence right away. So, yeah, I'm just so impressed. And then the other side of that deal, Miguel Vargas is fitting right in. He's fitting right in.
Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously there have been the pictures of him, the videos of him, just dejected as can be, and he did give it. Yeah, that was a 3-run error. The Eloy hit, where I was talking about on Tuesday night, was to Vargas, who threw it away. Yeah, I mean, he's struggling at the plate and in the field especially. He was in the collision, the farce that went, I think, in every baseball video all across the country, that where the 3-way collision where he ended up with a black eye from Andrew Benintendi. And apparently Benintendi really was calling for the ball, and if he would like it, it's his ball because he's the outfielder coming in.
Certainly is.
So it was Vargas' fault that he ran into Benintendi. That's not turned out to be a good trade.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel really bad for Miggy. He was a beloved clubhouse figure in LA, and I mean, he was okay for the Dodgers. He was never great, but he was okay. But people loved him so much. I mean, he's such a good energy guy, such a nice guy, that I think getting out of that environment into the most dysfunctional clubhouse in baseball it would take a toll on anybody. And, he's making a lot more money than most people, but he's not making insane amounts of money. So it's not a situation where it's like, oh, you're making 25 mil, get out there and do it. It's kind of like, oh, my dream was to win a World Series. And I went from probably doing that to being in the laughing stock of Major League Baseball. And between the Vargas memes and, of course, my favorite clip, which is Lenine Sosa getting cranked in the dome by the catcher.
Actually, on the schnoz.
Second base, right on the schnoz, which, come on. I mean, if there is a more 2024 White Sox video out there, like, come on. That was just, like, what is going on over there? And then you got Grady Sizemore who comes in, and everyone's re-energized. They're wearing pictures of him on their shirts in batting practice, which I think is kind of hokey and stupid. I mean, it tells you how much they hated Pedro Grifol. But it's weird to all be out there with a picture of your manager. Maybe it was a lost bet. It could be a kangaroo court thing. I don't know. But definitely,
the players are much worse under him than they were under Grifol. Although, in some fairness to Sizemore, Grifol had the players that then got traded away at the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, Sizemore's essentially inheriting a double-A team in Major League Baseball. You can't be expected to do a whole lot with that, especially, and we can talk more about this in the second half, with just how terrible Luis Robert has been. But yeah, there has been no seismic shift. I'll coin that right now. No seismic shift in what the White Sox have been doing since Grady took over. Again, I'm not blaming Grady for any of that, but any hopes, the text threads were saying like, oh, he could come in and re-energize these guys and get the young guys motivated. And it felt like he did for a day. And now we're just back to the doom and gloom.
You mentioned somewhere, because we went off on the tangent. We were headed somewhere, and then we ended up going off somewhere else with Kopech and Vargas and so on. But you just said in here, dysfunctional clubhouse. All right. That's been 3 years of that, at least 3 years, probably 4. Ever since La Russa came, certainly was. Once Renteria left, and I was a huge Renteria fan, and the fact that they fired him is just unpardonable. But ever since La Russa came in, it's been dysfunctional. And guys leave. Remember last year, Middleton left and said, it's really terrible what's going on in the way there's no discipline and so forth. And then Lance Lynn backed him up. But nobody has ever, and you can't very well do it while you're still playing. You'd think somebody who's, retired or somebody maybe who's, I don't know, gone off somewhere to play in Japan would say, why? I mean, they're dysfunctional because they're losing over 100 games, and it's miserable to be in that situation. But it was going on before all the losses came. Who?
Yeah.
It's somebody. It's somebody or some group of somebodies that has got that clubhouse messed up. They talk about lack of leadership. People would point at Jose Abreu. Well, I'm sorry. Jose came out there every single day. You had to get a bulldozer to push him away from playing in a game if both legs were broken. That's leading by example.
I mean, I think
the leadership thing, that can't be it. There's something gnawing at it underneath, and there's never any names. No reporters seem to come up with a name everywhere. Even so-and-so anonymously said that it's player X.
Well, I think that situation. I'll speak on a couple things there. One, any doubts about Jose Abreu should just be completely blown into the wind. I mean, ridiculous to question his leadership. Look at what happens when he leaves. Maybe he wasn't some miracle leader that people expect, but the guy was a leader in the clubhouse. The guy got a lot of guys who weren't that good to play above what they are, and now he's gone, and they are the worst environment in all of baseball. It's just insane to even think. I would love for Abreu to come out and be like, here's the problems. But
Yeah.
he's obviously probably not in a great headspace right now. I think this team is past the point of a clubhouse leader. I just don't know when you're losing at these levels, when you have multiple win streaks of over 10, one over 20, how do you get guys to get their head in the game? I just don't think it's possible. You've got so few veterans on that team who have been White Sox players for very long. Luis is clearly dead inside, which we'll take a break and come back and talk about that. But I think the team is beyond clubhouse leadership right now. I mean, if you're the captain of a boat and the boat has 100 holes in it and is sinking rapidly, the captain's going to be way more likely to say, get out of the boat, than he is to say, bail, 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 bail. We can do this, guys. We can do this. We can keep this boat afloat, because it is such a lost cause. It's such a lost cause. So even for a clubhouse leader, they need some sort of motivation that tells them that things could be better. Things could be better. But that doesn't exist. And it doesn't exist at such a profound level right now that who's going to take over? I mean, your one option kind of is Luis. And yeah, let's take our break here. Let's come back and talk a little bit more about this. Hang in there, and we will be right back on Sharing Sox. Welcome back to Sharing Sox. So we were talking about the complete void of any sort of clubhouse leadership. And I'm actually going to fully take this away from the players. I think in April or May of this season, there probably would have been a good argument that there's not great leadership from the players happening. Of course, Luis was hurt for a lot of that. Eloy was always hurt, and now he's not even there. But I think at this point, you can't point the fingers at the players for anything that is happening. And they suck. They suck. Don't get me wrong. They all suck. But it's a product of the environment and the product of being on a team with a bunch of guys who shouldn't be playing Major League Baseball. And honestly, Luis Robert is barely making the case that he's a major leaguer right now.
And it's interesting. He's got negative defensive runs saved, negative D-WAR. Luis Robert, Golden Glove 2 years ago. It's a negative defender, and he still can run 6,000 miles and catch the ball. I think it's got to be throws.
Yeah, he can't throw for crap.
He never could, but his throws are more mysterious. And, there was that case where he didn't even try to make a throw on a game-winning second. There's no way in hell he was going to get the guy. Absolutely true. But you make an effort.
But the guy is touching third base when you pick up the ball. I mean, when I'm playing softball, if I see a guy in center field, and I think my softball arm is, quite a bit better than Luis's baseball arm. I'm also throwing the ball hundreds less feet. But I do have comparatively a better arm. When I see a guy, I get the ball in the outfield and a guy is touching third, I'm like, come on, let's go. Off to the races. It's one of the most exciting things that can happen for you as an outfielder. Most of your time is you just are catching a ball and tossing it back in, or catching the ball, picking up a ground ball and trying to keep the guy from going to second. If you get a chance to even throw a guy out at the plate, throw a guy out at third base, I'm foaming at the mouth. I mean, my biggest danger is that I'm looking at that instead of making sure I come up with this ball, because it's so exciting and it's so fun to have that opportunity. To see him just say, no. I mean, he's a terrible arm from center field. Terrible arm. You essentially just have to play catch with the catcher in that moment.
And it's such a thing. While we're on that arm, it's actually not a weak arm.
It's not weak.
It's that he moonballs everything. Well, the guy's been in the major league for years. This is another sign. There's just either there's no coaching or there's no listening. Now, certainly you've got cases like Oscar Colas, who obviously never listened to anybody. ever and never even learned baseball fundamentals in 2 years in Japan, which is almost impossible not to do, which explains why Colas will never be a major leaguer of any note. But and you'd think in Luis's case, he's a top-notch player in many ways. Not right now, where he's striking out, was it 35, 40% of the time? Well, he's over half the time at one stretch. But that he would listen to that he would listen to bring it down, throw it on a level. And there is that problem. If you're in dead center field, and you're throwing home, you got the mound in the way. But still, you got to make the throw. And if you hit the mound, you hit the mound. Bad break.
And if you're a moon baller, just moon it. Like that guy was touching third base. You can throw that ball 200 feet in the air, and as long as it comes down near the catcher, you've got to play. Like it's tough to tell. It is. I agree. It's tough to tell if it's nobody's telling them or if it's nobody's listening. And I have to assume the blame in some way has to go on your coaching. It has to go on your coaching because all 9 guys suck. So if
exactly.
it was one guy.
One thing I was going to say is you being an actor and me having done a lot of theater, been around theater for a great deal. If you have a play, it really applies to a movie as well, and none of the actors are good. I mean, let me start. I'll go the other way around. 1 or 2 of the actors are really bad. That's on the actors.
Yeah.
But if you have a show, be it play, movie, TV show, and all the actors are bad, that's on the director. And that's what we've got going on here.
Yeah. I mean, I think nobody's either they have collectively decided we're not listening to these guys. And if that's the situation, you have to ask why. Because they suck. They're in constant state of embarrassment. So you would think, okay, if these guys are telling us smart information, we should probably listen to them so we're not the laughing stock of the professional sports world anymore. Or the information is garbage or it doesn't even exist. And I mean, I have zero faith in the coaching staff there. Zero. And I see every coaching staff that comes through this stadium here in Los Angeles. I see them all. And of course, there is a range. You've got guys who are as good as anyone maybe in the history of the game, like Torey Lovullo, who you're just like, gosh, you would just foam at the mouth to play for a guy like Torey Lovullo. But they surround themselves with motivated coaches who care so much about the game and the players and what they're putting out on the field. I have to blame the coaching staff of the White Sox. There is zero motivation. Nobody's improving ever. It's crazy to see pitchers come through and never get better. I mean, when you have a new pitcher come to the Dodgers, Mark Pryor is out on the field with these guys for hours to get them on the same page. They're looking at pitch grips on iPads for hours to try to figure out what's working, what's not working, how do we change this, how do we add another pitch, even though it's September. They're doing things to try to constantly get much better at the game of baseball. I can't imagine any of that is happening for the White Sox. They are in such a lazy coasting mode of coaching. And I don't know about size.
I think let's go back beyond the coaching because I happen to be doing some research on this for something I'm going to be writing in the next few days. We come back to the fact that the White Sox have, and definitions of these positions vary from team to team, so you can't be exact. But the White Sox have fewer research, you call them research and development, call them analysts, whatever it is, in the front office than any team in baseball. And different lists do different things. Some will show Oakland's got fewer. Some will show maybe Colorado's got fewer. But whatever list it is and however somebody's divided it, the Sox are right at the bottom or a point or two above it. The Dodgers are always, I think Dodgers have more guys, kinesiologists, than the White Sox have scouts. It's just,
yeah.
And Tampa Bay is far beyond the Dodgers because they're doing this with no money.
Yeah.
They're only a game behind 500 this year, and it's a year where they gave up.
Yeah, totally gave up.
But it's because they analyze everything so well from the draft onto what the guy does the next time he comes to bat. And there's no sense that the White Sox have this analytical thing. They theoretically hired an analytical coach when La Russa came in. He brought his son-in-law to sit in the dugout and do the analytical work. He was supposed to be the guy with the computers, could run the iPad. Obviously, it's not there, and it's not backed up somewhere at 35th and Shield, somebody in an office running, this is what we want to do. This is how we do it. Oh, look, I now see, after watching 200 hours of tape and running data through the computers 100 different ways, exactly how we should change his grip. It's not there. It is there for other teams. It's not there for the White Sox or for the other horrible teams that are down there with them.
It's constantly there. When it comes to unhelpful sons in the White Sox dugout, I actually think La Russa is the top of the list, and that is a list that includes Drake LaRoche. I actually think Drake LaRoche was probably less harmful to the White Sox than the La Russa family. But yeah, they're not doing any of the analytics, and so you're throwing out teams like Oakland and Colorado, who would be having famously bad seasons if it wasn't for the White Sox. And they've got 20-something games on the White Sox. I mean, it's just absolutely pathetic. And it all, as we know, we say it all the time, it all comes down from the top. It comes down from ownership, and it trickles down through your front office and then into the clubhouse,
in this case, when you get to the analytics and the research and the scouting and so forth, it's not cheapness on the part of Jerry Reinsdorf. He is cheap, but that's not it, because those whole departments cost less than one utility infielder.
Way less.
What it is, I think he's 88 years old. He played stickball in the streets of Flatbush in the 40s and early 50s. And it's like, that's what he thinks the game is.
Yeah.
And the rest of Major League Baseball and minor league baseball and the hell of a lot of high school baseball has advanced way, way, way beyond that. And he's still stuck back there. He's even said it in speeches before that he doesn't believe in all this analytical stuff. It's
crazy. It's crazy. And we're seeing, just the sort of tragic character in this in some ways is Luis Robert. To see a guy who has all the makings of an absolute superstar, and then, he's still pretty young. Like, the idea that he is just kind of tanking this potentially great career away is such a bummer. It truly is. It's just awful to see.
Well, I think they're going to trade him in the offseason, even though they've got 3 years of control left.
They'll
go for it. Unfortunately, they were hoping he'd have a good second half, and then they wouldn't be selling low. They're going to sell low, but
I think
if Luis goes somewhere, that he's going to be a superstar again.
I think so too, but the problem is he's got to turn it around in a way that we can see. And, I don't know that I would trade him in the offseason. I don't know that I would. I think you have to hope that I would sit down with Luis and I would say, we're not going to trade you in the offseason. We're going to give you to July to figure out if you are going to be a superstar or not. And I can tell you this, if you don't turn it around, nobody's going to believe in you anymore. You have to come out. You have to get better in the offseason. You have to prove to the contenders that you are worthy of the big price tag, because it will be embarrassing to eat that deal for the White Sox. To trade Luis Robert and get nothing, I would say, I'm not trading you. I'm not trading you until the deadline. You need to put together a good half of the season, or you're just not useful. And he really does. I like Luis so much as a player. I want him to have this turnaround, and I just don't know that it's going to happen.
Well, he's about the only thing fun to watch on the White Sox.
But he hasn't been lately. That's the
But yeah,
thing.
I mean,
That's
under
what's
normal
so
circumstances.
disappointing.
Yeah.
So let's look at what we got coming up here as we continue the march to 121. So we're going to go to Boston, which is not necessarily going to be an easy place to win. It's not, Boston was getting really hot. They were looking really good. They were kind of looking like, oh, are we going to have a third team from the East hop in here? That has kind of cooled down. They're not, bad by any means, but they're not really holding on to anything. They're a 500 team now. Winning in Fenway, probably never easy, but it's not going to be particularly hard.
Let's count as we go here. As you take us forward, let's count. So we're at 109.
We're at 109 right now. We're going to have Boston, where we're going to throw Davis Martin against Pivetta. That feels like 110 to me. You've got Saturday at Boston, where we're going to throw Crochet, but remember, we're only going to throw Crochet for 4 innings, so it doesn't really matter. If you know your starter's going 4, and then you're bringing in one of the worst bullpens, then you really kind of just have to stay in the game for the first 4 and then do your damage. Then we're going to throw Flexen at Boston against Bello on Sunday.
Stretching his record for consecutive games lost by a team while you pitch. You're talking about guys that feel sorry. I feel sorry for Chris Flexen.
Me too.
A lot of those 21 games were his fault, but not more than half, probably fewer than half.
Which he has said. He's
had a lot of pretty good games, a couple outstanding games, and they've lost them all. He's had games he leaves not giving up any runs at all.
Yeah.
And they've lost them all.
And he loses those games. Yeah. I feel bad for him too. Then Cleveland is going to come to Chicago for 3 on the 9th, 10th, and 11th. Cleveland,
hold on, we didn't count. How many are we losing in Boston?
I think we're going to lose 2 of the 3.
Okay, I agree. So we're at 111.
I think Flexen is going to win on Sunday.
That would be cool. That would be super cool. I think
he's going to get his first win. Day game at Boston. I think Flexen's going to win on Sunday. So that puts us at 111 when Cleveland comes to town. Cleveland is obviously going to be extremely motivated to win these games. I think Cleveland is going to sweep.
Ooh, okay. Their starting pitching is pretty well fallen apart, but
it is. But we don't have anyone who can hit or pitch, so it doesn't really matter.
And Jose Ramirez, if he has to, will single-handedly win all 3 games.
Which is exactly what I think is going to happen. I think Cleveland is going to find that oomph. So I'm going to put us at 114 going to Oakland. Oakland is a big who knows, because some days Oakland is actually pretty good.
They've gotten quite a bit better, yeah.
And then some days they look like the White Sox. But I'm going to say that, so we're going to be home, which I think will help. I think, unfortunately, we're going to win 2 out of 3.
Okay, so that's 115.
115 when we go to Anaheim. Anaheim is terrible. They're terrible. And they show no signs of getting better. Of course, they're terrible, but 30 games better than the White Sox. So everything's relative here. I think we will likely lose 2 out of 3 in Anaheim because it's in Anaheim. So that
117
gets us to 117.
Did you forget Anaheim being here?
They're coming here after.
Oh.
So that puts us at 117, right? When we head to San Diego.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get wiped off the face of the earth in San Diego. I think we are going to get absolutely obliterated in San Diego while the Padres are trying to win a division or at least make the wild card. I think we're going to get destroyed there. I think we are going to come back to Chicago with 120.
At 120? At 120, okay.
And that gives you 3 games against Anaheim at home to get the record, which I also will predict if we come back to Chicago at 120, those games are going to sell well. I think you're going to have a pretty good crowd. If they can come back for those 3 games at 120, I think you're actually going to see some of the better sales you've seen the entire year for the White Sox, because the buzz around getting to see 121. I mean, when you've got the West Coasters out here saying, we'll drive to San Diego to see it, then the people in town are going to be foaming at the mouth to see 121. And then they end the season at Detroit. But I think they're going to come back to Chicago on September 24th with 120 losses. They're going to have 6 chances to get to 121, and I think they're going to end up at 123.
I was just thinking, I think they'll take 2 out of 3, but one of those 3 games at home will be 121, because you don't want to break the record on the road. I mean, who's going to cheer?
That's not. Yeah, you don't want to have the champagne bath and the visit.
Of course, if you wanted to make it exceedingly down to it, would be Tariq Skubal pitching game number 162 to give them loss number 121 on a perfect game.
Well, I can tell you this. If Tariq Skubal has them for that game, I think that's a really good chance Tariq Skubal is going to throw his first perfect game, at least a no-hitter, because the motivation will be extremely high, not only because he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, but you're going to want to hand him number 121, especially when you're the team that owns the 119. Yeah. You're gonna want to be the ones to get them 121. So I do think it is going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen early enough for me to get to see it in person, which is a shame. But I do think that if you can attend game 121, you should consider it. I think it will be a very exciting and complex.
They'll probably raise the prices for that. I have my sworn to not put a penny in Jerry's pocket, but I could do what I do and eat before I go and go on the secondary market for a ticket. I might do that. Yeah.
You might not even have to mess with the secondary market. You might be able to take the train down there, and the first guy who says tickets, you pull out a $5, and I think you've got a ticket to the game. I think those guys must be taking, bags of peanuts at this point to try to get rid of tickets. Because 1, who actually buys tickets that way anymore? And 2, they're holding something that is less valuable than the printer ink that was used to make it. So I think you could probably go that route. But I do think tickets will be $1 on StubHub as well. So that's only $100 after fees.
Yeah, cheap at half the price.
That is all the time we have for this week. Do you have any final thoughts before we go?
No, I'm just waiting for the train to roll on down the track.
It is exciting. I will say I did not watch a ton of this season on MLB TV, but because I'm out of market, I get almost all of the White Sox games. I have been watching most of their games because I am now committed to, years and years from now when people say the record that could never be broken, the 2024 White Sox, I want to be able to say I've watched a lot of those. And I don't think I've actually seen a win. So I feel pretty good about what I'm doing here. Yeah.
I have not covered a win since May, I think. I think I've covered something like Brett keeps a record of who has the most consecutive losses in games that we cover. And I'm not ahead. I'm at 10 or 11 or something. I'm not ahead, but I'm on a roll.
Wow. Well, on that note, we will, we'll be back. We got to be along for this ride. This is exciting. This is history in the making. And who doesn't love baseball history? So thanks so much for listening, and we will catch you soon right here on Sharing Sox.